So Denise, is it Mina or Mina?
You can say it either way. It's actually from Minogue.
Oh, right.
So it was Minogue, then it was Minnie, then it was it's just a misspelling. So you can...
How do you say it?
I say Mina.
Mina.
But if I'm in France, I say Mina. And I wish I said Mina here, because in Asian families, it's a first name. So it's like, if you see someone from the South Asian background, it's Mina. It sounds as if you're saying my name's Brian, but I pronounce it Brian.
Well, Brian, they say Brian here.
Well,
that's for Brian in the Irish name.
Well, or Deborah, but it's Deborah. Or sounds like you're fancying up a really daft name.
Yeah. So I've been reading up on you, obviously, since I wasn't going to come and meet you, and I found out that you started writing Garnet Hill 25 years ago instead of writing a thesis. Mm-hmm. So what happened there? Did you ever write a thesis?
Well, I was doing a PhD, and academic writing is a very specific house style, and I got really stuck with it, and just could not. I couldn't move forward. Every time it was like you have to footnote everything. I didn't really know what I was doing anyway. So then I just started writing a novel instead, and that was Garnet Hill. Couldn't believe it, but it was so much easier than academic writing, which some people find very easy. So my father-in-law passed away this year. He was a professor, and we got on so well. And I found in his notes the start of a crime novel. Yeah.
So it's in the genes.
It isn't, and I wish he told me, but he was involved in a real murder story, and it was a relative was charged with murder, and he proved that someone didn't have the parking ticket they said they had and must have moved their car. Anyway, but it's just, some people are great at academic writing, and some people just find it much easier to make things up.
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely the case with crime writing, isn't it?
It is.
Most of it is anyway. I also read that you moved around Europe a lot as a child, so you were in lots of different houses before you were 18. So did you find that make you more of an outsider, that you write about outsiders?
Yeah.
Because you feel not quite connected to where you are?
I mean, I think for some people that's a very uncomfortable experience. Mm-hmm. But I think everyone feels like an outsider. I don't think anybody thinks, right, here I am in the centre of the world. Mm. I think most people identify with feelings of otherness, feelings of separation, but I'm very comfortable with it. And I don't think everybody is very comfortable with it. I think some people struggle and really they want to be the establishment. I've never really wanted that. I think it's a good and useful thing to stand outside. Yeah.
And do you think that's helped you as a writer then to...
I think it's helped me in every way. Yeah. I think it has, yeah. And I think it makes you more compassionate. And I think it makes you, empathise more with the other point of view. I think if you can hold 2 points of view in your head, I think that's great for writing.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing with libraries and reading is that we would say that reading builds empathy in people, helps them understand other people's point of view, So to be able to read fiction and to get that is amazing, it's just one of those superpowers that we have whenever we read,
Isn't it amazing? And the more you read, the more empathetic you are. Yeah. Well, that's incredible, It's like working your empathy muscle.
It is. It definitely is.
It's the opposite of social media, which narrows down your point of view by showing you things you've seen before. So it's that thing of, you've just bought pants, do you want to buy some pants? No, but now all I can think about is pants. But it's like, you've accessed a homophobic thing. Would you like to become more homophobic? And that's the way the algorithm works. Whereas fiction is so different, It
opens it up.
It opens the world up, and it makes it less frightening.
So, family life and Alex Morrow, was that part of your... I know you wrote a lot about her as a young mother and her young family and how she juggled with that. Was that your experience as well whenever you were writing?
Very much my experience, and I think you don't see a lot of that. And actually, I was talking to Sarah Paretsky, and she said if she had one thing to do over, she would make VI have a family, because it's just such an interesting conundrum, and it is so much of the feminised experience of working. Do you have kids?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually left work whenever I had them initially. So I was out of work, well, I was doing part-time jobs, not my career as such. Came back into libraries whenever my youngest was 4.
Well, good for you.
You know, I did take a good bit of time out.
Yeah, but not total, because I know people who are going back now, their kids are 18, and they're just lost in the world of work. Yeah. Working way below their abilities. Yeah. That all the things they achieved in that time out are not acknowledged in the job market, are not appreciated. Yeah. And anyway, I just stayed in work. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I would have all the normal things. Childhood illnesses, sitting in a green room, people complaining about not getting good reviews, or how the publicity department didn't really get behind their book, and just feeling like, I'm still getting published. I cannot believe I'm still actually working. How lucky is that?
Did you write at home? Was that your...
Oh, yeah.
Around the kids?
Yeah. And also didn't want to have the kind of house where, you know, mummy's working, you can't go into the office. I just never wanted that. And so I would work in the mornings and I would work at night, and then we had childminders, so we had people coming in looking after the kids when they were wee during the day, and you know, just working when they were like playing a game or out or whatever in wee chunks, you know. Yeah. So
it's hard, isn't it?
Well, it is, but you know, to keep working at something you really love and also have children, to me, felt like a privilege. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't really like writing. They enjoy being published, or they enjoy thinking about it, but they don't really enjoy the time at the desk. But I'm very lucky because I do. So that's really when I'm happy, is when I'm sitting at the desk writing. Mm-hmm. So
do you plan, or are you planner or pantser?
Pantser.
So you don't know how it's going to end whenever you start?
No. But then you know, I mean, I have started planning, because it just it makes it much more fun, and it takes the terror out of it.
If you know where you're going, but you know not necessarily how you get there.
You can enjoy writing then. Yeah.
So I also saw, obviously, as I was reading through, that you had lots of different jobs before you went back into university. So you've had a lot of different protagonists as well over the years. So you've had a psychiatric patient, an investigative journalist, obviously the police, and then Anna, who's had such a hard time in her early life and then has taken on a completely different new life. Has your background influenced how you develop your characters, or what characters you choose?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it has, actually, yeah. And I think, you know, I used to say, if you have to have shite jobs, I don't know if you're allowed to say that. Worked in a library, maybe. Better get out of the country. Uh-huh. But if you've to do, you know, shite jobs, do lots of different shite jobs. You know,
get lots of experience.
Yeah, just lots of experience and lots of little worlds, because there are lots of little worlds. And you know, I've always done voluntary work, and I said to you know, I was talking to some young people, and I said, you know, voluntary work is a wonderful glimpse into a different world that isn't your world, and it just stops you being self-obsessed. But it gives you glimpses into little worlds, lots of different little worlds, you know. Mm-hmm. So I was representing some advocacy. I was doing advocacy work a while ago, and it was a long-term stay patient in a hospital who was living in a hospital and had done for 50 years, and more recently working in a soup kitchen, where, you know, we're kind of making soup for people who are either asylum seekers or just in a state of crisis, or they're unhoused. And it just stops you thinking about yourself, do you know what I mean? And all those other little jobs, it's little glimpses into the world of usherating. And do you know what I mean? And you know, I mean, I think there is a kind of grandiose stand backness if you're a writer, where you think, well, you know, I mean, I appear to be an overweight, depressed usherette, but really I'm a writer. Do you know
what I am at that time?
Do you know? And actually, no, you're just an overweight, depressed usherette. But you know, I mean, I think that kind of perspective on things, of actually watching what's going on, so you can see bullying in the work, you don't get angry about it, you just think, well, that's interesting, and how she's dealing with that's interesting, and, you know, observing. You know?
Very observant. And I know you worked for a while on graphic novels. Are you still doing that, or is that
Yeah.
How do you
I
find
still
that,
do that.
With collaborating with people instead of doing something you're on your own and adapting, obviously, somebody else's work?
It's so difficult. I won't lie. You know, and the gains are very petty. So you write the script, and then it goes to the artist, and then the artist sketches it out, pencils it out, and they send it back to you. And you say, well, that's not quite right, and could we change this, could we change that? And then they say, you don't know the pressure I'm under. My wife's just left me. And you're like, oh. Do you know what I mean? And then they colour it in, and that's it.
I'm sure they'd love to hear you say that.
Yeah, well, I don't think he speaks English, that particular guy. So yeah, so but I mean, it's very interesting. You know, sometimes it's a bit dismaying. Sometimes they actually do something much better than what you wrote. And but I think that's true of all collaborations, isn't it? Do you know, it's working with people. Yeah. It's, you know, sometimes people are like, wow, you've really brought loads to the table, and then other times you're just an albatross. Do you know? I wish I could draw.
Yes, you could do it all yourself. Yeah, if you could draw, couldn't you? So you had a lot of success with Conviction, and then Confidence came after that.
Yep.
So yeah, I really enjoyed Conviction and Anna, and that relationship with Finn. I mean, which is very platonic, but at the same time, you know, they're obviously very damaged people, both of them. You know, I like the way that they work together. And then you've done a lot of true crime stuff. I know you're very into true crime podcasts, and The Long Drop was
true crime. Yeah.
You seem to have had lots of different fingers and different pies. What's your most favourite genre, or have you not got one? Or do you just like different things?
Yeah, I just think they're all the same thing. I think, you know, the marketing, we get so caught up in those categories. Yeah. You have to, because you're a librarian. Yeah. And booksellers have to, because people come in and they're not going to say, I feel kind of a bit like this kind of thing. So they're going to say, you know, it's in that department or it's that department. But that's not really how it feels when you're writing stuff. You just feel like you're following your nose. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, basically my career doesn't make any sense, because if you have one book, one type of a book that fits into a marketing category, you should just keep writing that same book over and over again for big sales. But I thought, well, you know, I could have been a lawyer, I could have done other things, I could have done something much more useful. But I'm not going to do that, so I'm not going to flinch from taking chances, you know? So the Garnet Hill books were kind of the first test of that, because Maureen O'Donnell in the second book should have become sort of ubermensch, kind of very powerful character, but she was depressed, and I thought, I'm not going to lie about that experience, do you know? Yeah, so she actually went down into a very deep depression in the second book, which is a good way to shake off lots of readers. But I just thought, I'm not going to get trapped like that, you know? And but it's difficult if you're working in a marketplace and you're trying to make something, because there are accommodations that you make, but at the same time, you don't want them to fundamentally shape what it is you're doing, you know? So, I mean, I think when I started writing comics, people were like, why are you doing that? It's so low class, and comics are for people who can't really read. It's to help people read, isn't it? And I was like, no, it's a really amazing form, and, you know, and, but I mean, that's really changed over the past 20 years, you know, shifting from one thing to another. And, you know, I had a Brecht play on just before. I did an adaptation of Brecht just before lockdown. It actually got shut down in lockdown, and I've done loads of things that just don't make any sense. So I don't know how anyone's going to tie all those things together. But just following my nose and just thinking that sounds really exciting and stimulating. And sometimes I'll do something and it's a bit of a disaster. I mean, everything isn't a massive success, but it stimulates you to do something else. You know,
your publishers don't put pressure on you to stay in the one genre or to do something new there.
Well, they're not always happy about it, I'll be honest with you. I just got, because I've got a book out at the moment.
The Marlowe one?
I've got a Philip Marlowe book out, which is a continuation estate novel. And I've also got a book out called Three Fires. And in America, they can't get their head around. It's two different publishers. Over here, they're much better about it. And they, you know, we've got like a Google document about which one I'm doing an event for, and they sort of accommodate one another. But in America, they cannot cope with the fact that there are two things going on at the same time, and they're different things. You know, and
because you had Rizzio, and now you've got Three Fires, both historical novellas.
Yeah.
So I would imagine there's a lot of research goes on along with those.
Loads. And I would imagine from the glint in your eye that that's something you love as well. Is it?
Well, I do like, yes, and I'm in the middle of Ritzio in the audio and on the car. In the
Right.
car, I would listen to stuff on the car, and then I read books obviously as well. But yeah, so Ritzio, I've just downloaded and started, so I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, right, okay.
Disclaimer.
Right, okay. But I meant doing research.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I love doing research.
oh, I love doing
Like
research.
I've been researching you for a couple of days.
Oh, have you? Oh,
Yeah,
so loads and loads of research. Yeah. But the Three Fires is about Savonarola. So I'd written that as a radio series for Radio 4.
Oh, right.
And it was like 5 15-minute episodes over 5 nights. And I thought, oh, well, I'll be able to just publish this. And so the publisher bought it, and then I sent it to them, and they said, no, this doesn't work. And they were right. It didn't work on the page. It worked as a spoken piece, but it just didn't work on. So I had to completely rewrite it.
Right.
And so it's completely different now.
It's about Florence and the...
Yeah. Well, you never hear about Savonarola because the Medici were there.
Yeah.
Michelangelo was there. There's just so much going on in Florence at that time. But basically, he was the puritanical backlash to the Renaissance. So he kind of led a kind of religious revival meeting, a religious revival thing, denouncing corruption in the Catholic Church. He was incredibly brave. Denouncing bankers for charging people too much, denouncing the rich for corrupting politics, and then segueing straight into, and this is why we have to kill all the Jews and the gays. Yeah. But there's so many parallels with populist movements.
Burning books.
Now, burning books, trying to limit access to information, centralisation of power, whipping people up into a frenzy. And as Machiavelli said, Savonarola was great at whipping people up into a frenzy, but what you need then is an army to enforce compliance, and he didn't have that. But even then, it's like all these mechanisms that we're witnessing now with Trump, with Modi, with Erdogan, all of them are being played out in Florence at that time.
Nothing new under the sun.
There's nothing new. It's quite boring.
It's quite frightening too whenever you think about it.
And anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
So it's always gays, women and anti-Semitism, and it's always, Savonarola didn't even want women to come to Mass. He said they could just stay at home, what are they doing, Yeah, it's just, anyway, so you never really hear about him. He's quite a fascinating character. Yeah.
So, what's next on your, I would imagine you're in the middle of something else now.
I am. Surprisingly, yes, I am. I'm writing a book, and it's kind of about being successful and how do you stay compassionate and aware of what's going on in the world. So it's about how beguiling being financially secure is. It's about how beguiling being accepted is. And it's about somebody who has to stand up and basically disagree with her peer group. So it's about a forensic scientist who finds out that the evidence that she gave in a very prominent trial is nonsense. And how could you do that? And would it make any difference if you did? And it's really about climate change. And it's about, why are we not doing something now? Why is it down to just oil? And the rest of us are just saying, well, do you know, how what would it take? There's such an interesting quote, and it's easier to fool someone than convince them they've been fooled, Yeah. And I think that reversal of a position I think that's so interesting, And you see how we've all been seduced into, it's comfortable, of course you go away twice a year. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, people were flying away for weekends.
Yeah.
What are we thinking? Do you know, as if nothing has any consequences? And anyway, so it's about that. So it's quite difficult, and you really have to sort of look at yourself. And
where's it based?
I think it's based in London. And I think because the divisions of income, see, in Scotland, the income differentials are just as wide, but very like here, we hide that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's vulgar to show your money.
Yes.
But in London, the differences are so pronounced, you can't hide it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it maybe needs to be in London. But I mean, it's it's fascinating. Yeah. Anyway, so a lot of those science things that are irrefutable evidence, even DNA. Every generation has some scientific method they think will prove the truth. And it's just, these are very difficult decisions to make. We want to hand them over to a scientist. And very often the evidence is rubbish. Ted Bundy was convicted on the basis of forensic dentistry. And that's junk science now. Yeah, I know. You know?
Did he do it?
I think he did.
Like he
I think he did. But blood spatter, you know, that's absolute made up nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
So CSI isn't always right.
Well,
Definitely not.
Why don't they just put the lights on? Why put the lights on? Why are they walking about with wee torches? And
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? There's a light switch right behind you.
They all hold the torch like this, you know, they all come to torch holding classes outside. They have to do it this way, not just hold it on.
And when they put it in their mouth, they're never dribbling outside.
Bring some realism in, yes. Well, we look forward to seeing to reading your next book as well as all the other ones that you've got coming out recently. And thank you very much for your time.
It's a delight. Thank you for coming to meet me. That was lovely.